Howdy folks, I'm Colonel Sanders and you're not. I found this video about the Dave Thomas story, and I'm going to link it in the, not comments, but the description below so you could watch it for yourself as the whole thing. I'm only covering the part with Uncle Harley to see if it's accurate and maybe even learn something. A lot of people, before I watch this, a lot of people have a misunderstanding that Dave Thomas and Uncle Harley had a big falling out years after they started working together. People think that Uncle Harley screwed him over on some franchises and then screwed him out of a lot of money, and that's not true. First off, Dave Thomas, according to my cousin Karen, who is Lee Cummings' daughter, and Lee is the Colonel's nephew that helped build Kentucky Fried Chicken alongside with him, they knew Dave Thomas. He was a close family friend of theirs. They remained friends with him. Lee remained friends, and the Colonel remained friends with Dave Thomas years after they got out of Kentucky Fried Chicken. So there was no falling out between them. They were friends. What had happened is Uncle Harley had convinced Dave Thomas to take these poor operating franchises at Kentucky Fried Chicken because he knew he had what it took to fix the problem. Other things reported as they were looking at somebody to throw the problem at. Uncle Harley knew that Dave Thomas had what it took. And although they butted heads at times working together, because they were both strict working men, Dave Thomas was able to turn around those franchises into multi-million-dollar franchises. They were running 2-for-1s and all other kinds of business deals to be able to promote Kentucky Fried Chicken in those locations and build them up to these really good locations, make them very reputable. And when he sold those back to Kentucky Fried Chicken, he sold them for a few $1,000,000. But Dave Thomas wasn't screwed out of it. He didn't sell them back to the Colonel. Uncle Harley had already sold out at this point. Uncle Harley sold out of KFC in 1964 to Governor John Y. Brown Jr. and Jack C. Massey. And those are the people that these franchises got sold back to in regards to being sold back to corporate. And then he started Wendys with the money that he made with Kentucky Fried Chicken. He was fascinated by the fast food business. He had a lot of history in food. And Uncle Harley took him under his wing, taught him everything that he knew. And then he took that and ran with it and made another great restaurant chain. Today, Wendy, his daughter, is still the spokesperson for Wendys. Her name was actually Melinda Liu. People couldn't pronounce Melinda Liu, so they called her Wenda, and he looked at her and said, I'm going to call it Wendys. And that's how that name started with the restaurant there. But I'm going to cover this part of Dave Thomas with Uncle Harley to see if it's what I know, if it's more than what I know, or if it has some inaccuracies in it. So let's jump into that and see how accurate they are.
In 1950, at age 18, David enlisted in the Army during the start of the Korean War. He decided to enlist instead of waiting to be drafted because this way he would have a better chance of choosing his specialty. He volunteered to work in the mess hall out of a curiosity of how the Army ran its version of a restaurant. Shortly after, he enrolled in the Army's Cook and Baker School, where he learned about measuring and quantity systems. The school taught him about the big picture of feeding a lot of people, skills that would prove to be invaluable for the aspiring restaurateur. After being discharged, Dave would return to Indiana and was back working at the Hobby House. It's here that he would meet a waitress who would become his future wife. And while his military career was behind him, the former staff sergeant would soon begin reporting to a man of a different rank.
It's all original. It's all what? It's all original. It's all what? It's all original. It's all what? It's all original.
It's 1952 in Kentucky, and a man in his 60s is hitting the road with a revolutionary concept that will one day make him a multi-millionaire, as well as an American icon.
I got something you don't wanna miss. The best part, I got you on the list. All access.
He's Harlan Sanders, a local restaurateur whose business contributions have resulted in the governor bestowing him with the honorary title of Colonel. He's developed a recipe to perfectly season fried chicken and found an innovative way to prepare it by using pressure cookers that drastically reduced cooking time. And now, the Colonel is looking to expand his one-of-a-kind Kentucky Fried Chicken.
We'll talk about those cookers real quick. In past videos, I didn't understand why the cooking time has changed now. They still use Winston Industries pressure cooker design for the original recipe. Others are fried in Henny Penny pressure cookers, and then all the extra stuff is in deep fryers. The cooking time changed because the capacity of how much chicken can be cooked in one cooker changed. The more chicken, the more cooking time, which made more sense. Some people thought it was the oil changing that caused the cooking time to change. It's just the capacity that the cookers can hold changed. Now they can hold more, but it takes longer to cook all those pieces of chicken. Also, the pressure cooking design that Uncle Harley originally made also locked the juices down to the bone, which kept it under so much pressure that the fat was not able to absorb into the chicken, so they had the least amount of absorption than any other product that was competing with them. So not only did it drastically cut down the cooking time, but it also kept the fat out of it, and it was less greasy in that sense.
His plan is to sell his secret blend of 11 herbs and spices, along with the rights to use his image and likeness to independent restaurant owners for a 5-cent commission on all chicken sold. Soon, Colonel Sanders will cross paths with a young Dave Thomas in a fortuitous meeting that will change both of their lives forever. The Colonel was successfully signing up restaurants near and far, and would eventually arrive at the Hobby House, where he would also convince a reluctant restaurant manager, Dave Thomas. An ambitious Dave began selling the Colonel's fried chicken, and business at the Hobby House took off, with lines out the door. But it wasn't just the quality of the product. It was also due to Dave's innovative approach to marketing and branding that not only helped sell the chicken, but changed the way the entire restaurant industry operated from that point on. Dave began conducting customer surveys, something unheard of in the restaurant business at the time, and found that customers liked ordering food to take out instead of dining in. It was convenient and saved time for those looking to eat at home, as well as for the growing segment of travelers who preferred taking the food with them to enjoy at parks and picnics. This insight led Dave to open a room in the restaurant strictly for take-home orders, in effect, pioneering the concept of carryout. In those days, marketing was also a foreign concept for restaurants. They would just cook the best food possible and rely on word of mouth to bring in more customers. Knowing the power of being a showman, Harlan Sanders had turned himself into a character. But for all of his showmanship, the Colonel was still just a one-man show. Dave sought to magnify the Colonel's visibility by getting him on local TV and radio spots. It was the early days of television, and Dave would get publicity for Kentucky Fried Chicken by offering free chicken in exchange for airtime for the Colonel. Dave believed that since food was such a personal thing tied closely to family life, that people wanted to know the values of the person serving it. And it worked wonders. Colonel Sanders soon became a household name.
Say, you probably consider yourself a pretty good cook. Right? Well, how'd you like to make $1 million frying chicken? Yeah. Today's guest did just that. But he has been a soldier in the Spanish-American War, a blacksmith's helper, railroad fireman, law student, justice of the peace, ferry boat operator, and filling station owner. What's more, he made his fortune frying chicken after the age of 65, with nothing but an idea and a Social Security check to go on. Ladies and gentlemen, meet a man who says it's never too late to succeed, Colonel Harlan Sanders.
With his great success in selling the Colonel's chicken out of the Hobby House in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Dave was summoned to Columbus, Ohio, to help turn around 4 other Hobby House locations that were also serving Colonel Sanders chicken but were surprisingly failing. With the opportunity to make more money and receive stock options, Dave took up the challenge and moved his family to Columbus. And he not only turned them around, he took Kentucky Fried Chicken to the next level. He simplified their menus to focus primarily on featuring the chicken. Then he updated the look of the already popular KFC bucket to the red and white striped design that remains to this day. And as a way to attract customers, Dave had erected a giant revolving bucket sign. The Colonel loved the idea so much, he had them installed in all of his franchises. But perhaps the biggest impact Dave had on Kentucky Fried Chicken was building the brand itself. You see, while Colonel Sanders was working a franchise model of sorts, it wasn't done the way we think of a franchise today. Back then, the independent restaurants retained their own names and simply listed Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken as a featured menu item. But after realizing that the majority of customers were coming to the Hobby House specifically for the chicken, Dave decided to change the name of the restaurant from Hobby House to Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken, taking a simple featured menu item and transforming it into a full-fledged brand. Dave's contributions elevated Kentucky Fried Chicken and made him a very rich man in the process. But he wasn't done with the restaurant industry, and far from done with innovating it.
So all in all, they got that pretty well nailed on the head. That's pretty accurate. I come across a lot of these things that people come up with. This was released a couple of years ago, only a few 100,000 views. My followers want to give them a follow. I actually like this. I like it when people get their history right. They didn't put any misinformation in there with Uncle Harley. I come across a lot of these things where people put the misinformation in there, and it's not their fault. They just come across it. They think, hey, this must be true. It's on the internet, and they put it on there. And they did really good on covering the history with Dave Thomas and Uncle Harley in this. Now, I'm not going to cover the whole thing of Dave Thomas, because Wendys wasn't a big thing. Like, my family didn't start that. Uncle Harley gave him the opportunity to succeed, and he took it and he ran with it. And the rest of that is Dave's story. And this channel, I cover Uncle Harley's story and the stories of my family. So if you are interested in watching the whole thing of this, it's about a half hour long, and it's going to be linked in the description below. But this was a pretty good cover on it. So, ciao.